Hello, today I'm going to be talking about briefly my book that I wrote in 2024 called Seventh-day Adventist Church Quick Overview. And this book can be read in under 60 minutes approximately. It may be 30 minutes for some or whatever. And it's structured in the design how, why, what, when, where, and who. And I'm just going to briefly talk through it. Now, this can be downloaded for free from matthew2414.com. So the website is www.matthew, M-A-T-T-H-E-W, 2414.com. Okay, and so that's the front page. And now this book can be purchased from Amazon as a paperback or hardback, but you are more than welcome to download it entirely for free. You don't have to ever buy anything at all from the website. So if you want to check that out. Okay. So first of all, here's the index, dividing it into who, what, why, when, where, and how. And so this is the first page here. And then talk about who was Ellen White. And she was one of the key founders of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And more about her later. And then who are the remnant is the second page. So there's 60 pages in total. And the remnant is referring to, those who keep, the commandments of God, etc., who are faithful followers of Jesus Christ. And then who was James White? This was, in fact, the husband of Ellen White. And Joseph Bates, he along with James White he was one of the three co-founders, essentially, of the church. And then William Miller, he was the man who the Seventh-day Adventist Church, in a sense, kind of springboarded off. He believed that Jesus was returning in 1843 and changed that to 1844, but he never actually became a Seventh-day Adventist. And then Hiram Edison, he was someone who thought that the prophecy of Jesus returning in 1844 was actually correct, just the event was wrong. So William Miller, etc., thought that Jesus was going to return to the earth, and Hiram Edison said that Jesus went into the heavenly sanctuary in terms of judgment and atoning against sin, etc. Okay, and then Willie White, he was the second surviving son of Ellen White, and he was a big helper in her life. Edson White, he was the oldest son. He was a bit of a rebel and so on, but he did come back to the fold and served faithfully. And then John Harvey Kellogg, you may know from the serial, he was encouraged, sort of protege, etc., of Ellen White in some sense, and he knew her as a boy and helped with his health, etc. And but he actually separated from the Seventh-day Adventist Church. He became involved in pantheism, etc. Ted Wilson, this was just the previous president, very good president of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and there's now Ayrton Coller, who's now just become the new president. And that was since the book has been written. The Great Controversy, this is the conflict between good and evil that Seventh-day Adventists believe in and Elba wrote about. The Millerite movement, again, to do with William Miller, believing that Jesus was going to return shortly. And the Great Disappointment, this was in 1844, where 22nd of October, where Jesus didn't return, and everyone was hugely disappointed, obviously, expecting him to return. And the Spirit of Prophecy, in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, we believe that Ellen White received prophetic messages from God, and also a series of books are referred to in the Seventh-day Adventist Church as the Spirit of Prophecy. And the Conflict of the Ages, So these are 5 books, which is in a set also. And where does the name, also, what does the Seventh Adventist mean? So he believes that the church believes that the seventh day is a Sabbath, and Jesus is returning soon. And then we have the heavenly sanctuary, which is what Hiram Edson believed, and the church now follows the belief that Jesus didn't come literally to the earth; he moved into the heavenly sanctuary, which was a reflection of the actual Israelite sanctuary. And the health message: the Seventh Adventists, we live much longer, relatively speaking, on average. And there's the blue zone in Loma Linda in America, where there's people live much longer than globally. The three angels message, and to follow God and avoid false worship. And the millennium, this is where the saved will be taken to heaven, and the devil will be bound on earth with his angels, waiting for Jesus' return. And Ellen White was crucial. There were a lot of splinter groups after 1844, and essentially, when Jesus didn't return, or various ones, and Ellen White was key in pulling together the group of believers who said, no, the 1844 was the right day, just the wrong event that was misinterpreted by William Miller and the other people. Okay. Ellen White received huge amounts of guidance from God, Seventh Adventists believe, and so she wrote a lot about that to encourage and turn people back to the Bible. Now, it's very important to point out she didn't actually essentially make new doctrines that aren't in the Bible. In terms of our beliefs, the 28 fundamental beliefs, that's based entirely on the Bible. She would just guide to it. But essentially, all these are inherent in the Bible. It's not anything extra biblical in any sense, what Seventh Adventists believe for the key doctrines. And there are many reasons to become an Adventist, such as for health or having accurate doctrines and so on. And Adventists live longer. Oftentimes we're vegetarian, or don't smoke or drink. We shouldn't do, at least, etc. And Ellen White encouraged a plant-based diet. Now, just to make it clear, one can, if necessary, eat meat and so on. That's absolutely fine. Following kosher rules, i.e., no blood, etc. Now that is for health and to kind of have clearer thinking and so on. But again, you can become a Seventh Adventist without become vegetarian or vegan. I know probably a lot in my church to go to, so it's just not a requirement, or at least it shouldn't be. Okay, and it's a recommendation rather. And the Seventh Adventist Church is structured in a very organized fashion, which has helped it. In fact, a lot of original believers that came from something called the Christian Connection, which was against hierarchy, etc. But Ellen White felt that that was important, and of course, clearly, it's done the church a lot of good. And we tithe 10% to support the work of the church. Why is there sin in the world? That's kind of not so much, just showing it's an Adventist belief as well, but obviously in other churches have similar beliefs. And after Adam and Eve sinned in the Garden of Eden, and Adventists believe in annihilation. We don't believe that there's going to be eternal torment. And why hasn't Jesus returned? And so Adventists believe, we're preparing for his return, but also we need to, in terms of our characters and so on, but also we need to tell the world from Matthew 24:14, from the Great Commission, tell the world, etc. When did Jesus first exist? Seventh Adventists, our official doctrine is we believe in the Trinity, and Jesus has always existed. So it's kind of very mainstream belief. When was the world created? We believe in a literal creation. We don't believe in bacteria to man, humans, through evolution. We don't believe that. When's the Sabbath? Friday evening to Saturday evening. When was the Adventist Church formed? In 1863. And interesting events there. They had the discussion and they finally came to it, and it's obviously a very good name. Because it really kind of says what it does on the tin, as it were, as the expression goes. The first foreign missionary, this was J. N. Andrews in 1874 to Switzerland. And when was righteousness by faith debated? There was a great debate in 1888 in Minneapolis, and Ellen White was on the side of the Bible, fortunately, that we are saved by grace. And when do we understand the Bible prophecies? Well, we understand a lot now, and Ellen White's helped to guide that as well. When will the end times be? Some Adventists will claim it's now. Things are getting worse and worse, etc. However, ultimately, we haven't, reached the time where we can't buy and sell yet. And the time of great trouble, this is when probation is closed and no one can be saved, and we're just, the righteous will be persecuted. When will Jesus return? So after the time of great trouble, to redeem the saved and eventually destroy the lost. Where is Jesus now? We believe that he's in the heavenly sanctuary, judging the lives of those who are living now and have died. Where do Adventists get the doctrines from? As I mentioned already, we get it. It's purely based on the Bible in terms of our 28 fundamental beliefs. Ellen White may have helped guide Adventists to it, but it's just based entirely on the Bible. There's nothing which can't be supported directly from the Bible at all. The Adventist Church has, in fact, over 100,000 churches now, and is one of the fastest growing churches in the world. So at a time when many churches are kind of diminishing. So, and you can search for Find an Adventist Church and so on. And you can read Adventist books, Ellen White writings, if you search for that, or you can get them in bookshops or Amazon, anything like that. Seventh-day Adventist schools and universities are all around the world. And at the time of writing, there are 10,000 educational institutions, approximately in over 100 countries. The Adventist headquarters is in America, which is where the church was originally established. The church is growing fastest in Brazil at the time of writing, but other places are growing well as well. And ADRA is the humanitarian agency of the church, and it operates in over 120 countries. When do people go when they die? So Seventh-day Adventists believe that we rest in the grave. And so we don't believe that there's ghosts or anything, or people are in heaven at the moment. We're waiting for Jesus to return to raise the righteous dead. Where's the New Jerusalem? That's going to come down from heaven in the future. And when Jesus returns at the end of the millennium, and how difficult were the lives of early Adventists? They were very difficult. Ellen White, in fact, lost 2 of her children, they suffered all kinds of hardships, illnesses, etc. So they were real, quote unquote troopers. They really kind of walked their talk to really bring the message forward in real extreme hardship. How often did Ellen White speak publicly? So it was very often, or quite often, and in addition to her prolific writing as well. How many books has Ellen White written? And there's all kinds of compilations now, and there's approximate word count of something like 25 million words in all kinds of, including all her writings, etc. And how is Ellen White criticized? During her lifetime, she was criticized, all kinds of ways, having maybe demons or a plagiarist or whatever. And but of course, she was never actually brought to court during her lifetime. So there were no, laws that she could be proven to have broken that would have legally led her to court. And all of the arguments that people have made, they're really just kind of continuing from critics during her lifetime. So there's nothing new under the sun in a sense. And How can I become an Adventist? You can attend an Adventist church and contact the pastor, and then say you want to have lessons and learn about the church's teachings, etc., and finally become an Adventist that way. How are Adventists saved? So we're saved by grace through faith in Jesus, by repentance and turning away from sin. And then we have sanctification, which is the work of a lifetime. How fast is the Adventist Church growing? And it's growing rapidly with approximately 1 million new members per year. And how will the world finish? After the time of great trouble, Jesus will return and take the living and resurrected saved to heaven for 1,000 years. How are things with the new earth? Like the Garden of Eden, probably in many ways. And there's no sin, no death, etc., peace, etc. And then finally, how often should we read Ellen White's writings? Well, as Adventists, we believe that Ellen White was used by God in terms of our acceptance, beliefs, and so therefore we should become as familiar as we can with her writings, and she's got plenty of guidance. So, and that can be done 100% for free because all her writings are online for her books. Okay, so I hope this is of help, and if you've got any questions, please write them in the chat. And again, you can download the book entirely free from Matthew2414.com, as well as other books that I've written as well. Okay, thank you very much. Bye.